And thank you for joining our webinar today, Conversational Commerce, the Zero to One Guide, hosted by Sendeo with special guest Jesse Lucas from the Chit Chat.
Hey, everybody.
Before we, hey Jesse, before we get started, I want to cover off a couple of things. So if you have questions during the webinar, we'll try to address them at the end. If we run out of time, please reach out and we'll get back to you. Secondly, you'll notice a little QR code at the top of some of the slides, like this one here. If you point your camera at it, you'll be able to register for a complimentary conversational commerce assessment workshop. We'll tell you more at the end, but for those that want to register before you get there, then you can. Okay, let's get on with it. I'm Rodney Hazard, your host today. With nearly 20 years in the CX space, I've held product and go-to-market leadership roles across startup and enterprise software companies. I'm currently head of product at Sendeo, a digital engagement and conversational AI platform. It's being used by some of the world's leading brands to help increase leads, improve conversions, and drive better experiences across the buying journey. I'm delighted to be joined today by Jesse Lucas, founder of the Chit Chat and product manager at Lebara Mobile. Jesse, thank you for joining. Could you please share a bit more about yourself and the Chit Chat?
Of course. So first of all, thank you, Rodney, for having me alongside. I'm really excited to speak to everyone that's joined this webinar about conversational commerce. My journey in this area started at John Lewis, where I was a product manager for that, but also conversational AI and chatbots. And that's really kind of my speciality and what I focus on in my work. And so, like I said, I previously did that at John Lewis, and now I'm doing that exact same role within Lebara, which is a really awesome mobile phone network operating across 5 countries in Europe. Because I was really passionate about conversational commerce and saw the benefits it could produce, but was quite surprised by how kind of little adoption there had been in the UK. I created the Chit Chat, which is a blog podcast, and I get to speak at wonderful events and webinars like this, all about conversational commerce.
Fabulous. Delighted to have you, Jesse. So the first thing we're going to do today is discuss what conversational commerce is and why it's important. So we'll have a look at how it has evolved and where it's going, and give you some example use cases that are out there today. We'll also discuss what the common challenges are starting on this journey, and I know Jesse, you have some great insights around that, and really discuss what makes a great partner and who you should partner with. So on that note, let's get started. Jesse, why don't you share with our viewers what your definition of conversational commerce is and why it is so important for companies today?
Cool. So just as I put it on the screen here, it's all about the buying and selling of products and services through technology-powered dialogues between individuals, groups, and businesses. So let's bring that to life a little bit. I guess we're all used to the use case of live chat in e-commerce. Maybe as a customer, you've ordered something online, it hasn't turned up, or it has turned up, but it's turned up broken. What do you do as a customer? You go online to that website, you speak to an agent or a bot on live chat and get a resolution to your query. So that's about the post-purchase world. Conversational commerce is about using those same technologies, those same channels, but everything to do with selling the product. So imagine that same thing that was broken or you'd ordered that delivered. What about if you were searching for it on your website and you could converse with a bot or a human agent about that product? So say, for example, a TV, maybe you wanted some specifications on the TV, you wanted to know what the best one for you was based on your personal circumstances. It's all about using these technologies and channels to sell more. And in terms of why it's important, it's many different facets to it. So obviously I've said sell more a lot. And that's why we put on here driving incremental sales. I think that's an important distinction to make between incremental and just moving sales to a new channel. But also, without a doubt, and from my experience in here, it improves your customer experiences. Your customers have questions. You have stores, you have bricks and mortar, you have people for a reason in them because your customers have queries, they need your product advice, they need your knowledge. And so why is online any different?
Yeah, indeed. And I know we talked about this before, Jesse, about the difference between conversational commerce and uh, social commerce. Do you want to give your view on what you think the difference is?
Yeah, I think there's between conversational commerce and social commerce, there's an overlap, definitely. I guess within social commerce, we're looking much more broadly at social platforms and kind of how you sell across the entirety of those platforms, whether that be on and I've kind of I've had a bit of a detox of social media recently, but whether you're selling on like TikTok on their equivalent of the wall or the Facebook wall or through live example, that'd be social commerce, kind of all those different facets. With conversational commerce, there has to be dialogue within it,
Right.
between individuals. So that could be, so for example, direct messaging on Instagram with your brand could be a form of conversational commerce. But really, and the more kind of obvious channels for this are live chats on websites, WhatsApp, even video commerce or voice assistants. That's where the bulk of conversational commerce will sit, along with direct messaging in social platforms.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I remember a couple of weeks back I was reading about social commerce, and I think one of the analysts talked about a $900 billion market. But conversational commerce isn't small. I think I read that the the projected market for the next couple of years is to grow by fivefold. I think the amount of commerce that was done in 2024, according to Statista.com, was around $290 billion. So it's certainly not a small market. Um, do you want to add your view on that, Jesse?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you see is you see really big differences in the conversational commerce opportunities and markets depending on the country and the region you're in, and we can
Yeah,
take a lot of inspiration from other regions. So the kind of the big players or regions that are doing the best at this, and this is down to a whole host of reasons, both regulatory, technology, cultural differences, but the places where this is happening the best and you can see it at its fullest potential are the likes of China, India, and South America.
right.
They are the three kind of key areas I think everyone should be looking to. If you've got a friend in any of them, speak to them about it because they will know what conversational commerce is and how it's ingrained into so much more of their lives. And it's so different there as it is in the UK, where I suspect the majority of people watching this are from, but also UK, Europe, North America is so different in these regions to the ones I've mentioned beforehand. So, I'd really, look online, speak to friends from these regions because you will see this big difference and you'll see what's going to come here eventually. I really think we're going to be on a path towards where they are slightly different, but we're just a bit behind the curve on this one.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the key question I would ask organizations out there is what are you actually doing to capture a part of this market share? And I think that brings us nicely onto our next slide, because organizations are not really, I mean, I spoke to quite a few organizations and they're not really sure where they are on their journey of conversational commerce. And I think that has prompted us, Jesse, to create this conversational commerce maturity model. And I know we've spent quite a bit of time pulling this together, and sort of analyzing the market for where different organizations are at. So do you want to talk us through the maturity model at a high level, and then we'll go in, we'll dig a bit deeper into each phase?
Yeah, I guess this came kind of out of a conversation about what we thought would be helpful to listeners on this website, but also generally what we see. When I was actually speaking at an event 2 weeks ago in the Excel, and I asked people, whereabout they would place themselves on conversational commerce, and I'd say 95%, and this was like an e-commerce exhibition, hadn't even heard of the term. And so really there's so much to it, and there's so many different facets to it. And I guess a lot of when we talk about something like conversational commerce and we start naming it, I guess people start to associate it with what they know. And obviously, what's big at the moment is generative AI, ChatGPT, digital assistants, and so most people will think, oh, those technologies for selling. But what I guess we want to actually get across with this maturity model is there's actually so much more to conversational commerce than just that. And also, what we want to get across with this is, and I know we've had a lot of debate about this, Rodney, kind of back and forth, and the crawl, walk, run, I think is a really important perspective. What I would say to everybody is nobody's a run. If you're not even in crawl, don't worry about it, because I would say the vast majority of companies probably aren't even in crawl either, particularly within the UK, North America. So this is just to help people start to understand about how they can start on conversational commerce within their business, and then how does it look like as they can get more advanced, and then almost run is kind of like a North Star position to get to or to aim to strategically. But realistically, that could be quite a few years away for your organization.
Yeah, and I'll back that up as well. I think that, from my experience out there, working with even very large global enterprises, Jesse, a lot of them, I would say, are, probably between crawl and walk. The viewers will see later on an example that we have, a video that we have of a walk phase or use case, and it is quite advanced. So, but I think the key here is that we're giving organizations the pathway to reach that North Star, which I think is run. So, Jesse, why don't you talk us through crawl, because I know that you have been involved. You worked at John Lewis, for example, and you've been involved in some projects there.
Yeah, and I'd say I've got a really great example of crawl, and it's what we did at John Lewis. And I kind of mentioned this earlier. I feel a bit bad calling this crawl because this was like really hot what we did. This was so cool. It was so cool, not crawl. It was awesome. We had fantastic results, and I think with all things, I would say it shouldn't be every company's ambition to get to that run. That's not what every company should aim for. You need to fundamentally, first of all, understand what's important for your customers and your business. And then that will dictate where you're starting and where you're heading towards. And for some companies, they will remain in crawl, and that's completely good. And that will, give them lots of benefits and improve their customer experiences. And what we did at John Lewis was definitely a crawl because of its kind of lack of technology within it. We did it with the most minimal, but that was on purpose because that was our fastest route to testing. And how this really started with us at John Lewis is, if you're in the UK listening to this, you'll know John Lewis. It's huge. For those from outside the UK, it's a huge department store, both bricks and mortar, online. From the US, it's kind of like a Macy's, Bloomingdale's equivalent in the UK. And if you could ask anybody in the UK what we're known for at John Lewis, it'd probably be around fantastic customer service that's delivered by our staff in stores, and that's based on excellent product knowledge, impartial advice, and a fantastic experience. And probably like a lot of players in the online space as well, this all started with us with realizing, well, we have these amazing people in our stores. We get told about that this is what our brand is about all the time, and this is important to us as the core of our business, but we're completely lacking it in the online space. Like literally there's no existence of this. So we started with this one saying, well, how can we replicate some of that in-store magic, as we like to refer to it, in our online world? And for us, the simplest thing to do was we went to an electronics department within one of our stores, gave some of our staff laptops and sent them off home. And we then put on the products pages of our website. So imagine for like an electronic assortment, so like laptops, iPhones, TVs, we put a little live chat widget on the bottom of that screen, and customers could click on that. And after a few bot questions, just to make sure they were conversational commerce customers, so asking us about what iPhone they want rather than my iPhone's arrived, it's broken, which case we'd get them to our customer service team. We then put them through to these team of partners. And so we did this with very limited technology. And I think most companies could do this within a couple of days if they really wanted to.
Yeah. So I know, when we talk about kind of characteristics of crawl, I mean, I think what we're saying is that, these are not silo phases here. There
Mm.
could be a blend of characteristics and features across each one of them. But in general, crawl for us, I think, would be simply, the type of live chat use case where if a customer was on the website, they could engage via the web chat, and engage with the human, as I think is the case for John Lewis. Um, so for this crawl use case, I think we're probably talking limited data, limited context, limited personalization. It's reactive rather
Yeah.
than proactive.
I think limited
But
technology, kind of like
yeah,
combining a lot of those facets together is
yeah,
quite important. You're using a lot of what you've got, and then probably the human element or live agent element, as some people refer to it,
yeah.
is really present in this crawl stage.
Yeah, and we'll come on to the sort of outcomes and results
Mm.
from this use case of John Lewis. But if you look at the pros and cons, I suppose the upshot is, um, an agent can handle on a ratio of 3 to 1 versus chat message versus voice calls. So
Mm.
you could have more productivity there. But I think in a sales world, um, you're effectively bringing that sales assistant into your online store via this human agent.
Yeah, exactly. And that's we kind of always pictured it like that. We always try to vision in our heads, imagine, because obviously in stores, you know what the real world is like at the moment where customers are far few between. This was amazing for us because it was like we had a perfect queue of customers coming in, speaking to one of our agents, and just one after one. It was so productive. And there's so much you can do very, at a very basic level to
Yeah,
support with that, and make sure you retain that customer experience and that agent experience as well, because that's
yeah,
very important. And I just want to call out the pros of that. The human to human interaction, that is extremely powerful. And this is where it goes to what I said at the beginning around understanding your customers, understanding your business. It might
mm,
depend. It depends on what you're selling. This might be the ideal thing. You might not want a bot.
yeah,
It might be something that needs a bit of sympathy. It might be a really expensive product or a product you can heavily personalize or a really unique product, in which case maybe that human to human interaction is what you need. And likewise, as we'll get onto later, there's probably some use cases where a customer doesn't want to speak to a human at all, and they're just as interesting.
yeah, for sure. And what about the downsides, Jesse? Not to be pessimistic, but
Yeah, no, of course. We've done a lot of selling of it. So there's as with all, there's going to be limitations, right? And one of the obvious ones is when you're using humans, you're increasing cost at quite a rate, and you know it's the scalability of it is limited.
right.
Um, you can do things to manage that, like I've said. How do you? It's really important to protect that experience, but it's not possible for one agent to speak to 10, 100, thousands of customers at one time like a bot can. Your limit is realistically going to be 2 to maximum 3 interactions at one time. So yeah, you just that is a big limiting factor here: scalability and cost at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think the other I wouldn't say downside, but the thing that companies need to be aware of is the inconsistent customer
Mm,
experience because with a bot, it's maybe different now with generative AI, but with bots, you can kind of repeat that experience with the customer. With humans, everyone's different. So,
exactly.
there is potential for, a person to have a bad day and for that to come across on the call. Um, so I would say that that's something that we need to be aware of. So okay, that's the characteristics. You mentioned John Lewis earlier on. Jesse, do you want to just talk through kind of what's on screen here and what you've done?
Yeah, exactly. So this was the case study I referred to. I've talked to you about how we kind of got started and why we started this, but here's an example of it in action. So you can see that widget I talked about, literally a couple of bot questions just to make sure that they were kind of what we refer to as pre-sales or pre-purchase that they were looking to buy. And then you see that widget on the product page. And the weird thing was I always thought going into this when we started, I thought nobody's going to click this because they're just not going to get the concept. We've had TVs here for, like in this example, for ages. If we put a chat button, people are just gonna, they're either not going to interact or people have an issue. Are we going to sell more? And the one thing was we were absolutely overwhelmed with how many customers interacted with this chat widget. It was astonishing. And I think we've got some of the numbers on the next screen that we can take you through. So, like I say, we started with literally a handful of agents, and because of the positive response we saw to this. So again, I just want to recap on what the solution was. Very simple. It was connecting customers with our staff, our selling staff, over live chat as the channel of choice. That's it. Just asking any questions that they want to ask about these products. And we quickly had to expand that handful of agents to over 40. And John Lewis being a department store, we ended up covering off the vast majority of the assortment. So we're talking about fashion, sofas, electronics, beauty items. We were during Christmas time, which was a lot of fun. We were doing everything. And I always like to ask the question, so what? So what? We had a great solution. Lots of customers interacted with us. So what? At the end of the day, we're a business. And actually, we saw significant results. These are actually from our technology assortment, our trial within technology. And you can see that we had a +7, and that's a percentage point increase in conversion as a result of speaking to an agent versus those who didn't, online conversion, and a £39 rise in revenue per visit. And so from that financial basis, extremely successful as well.
Yeah, I mean, plus 7% is massive when you consider, the potential for scale there. Brilliant. Okay.
And it came through I haven't got the figures on here as well, but whenever we kind of talked about our conversational commerce within John Lewis, there was really 3 areas we were interested in that we covered. So it was all the financial metrics, which you can see on the screen here. And then, of course, it was the customer experience. So we measured CSAT. It was phenomenal, and customers loved it. We had, when they wrote in the verbatim about why they scored it, what they did, it was continuously scored 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5 by all customers. They would constantly say how amazing the service was. Don't lose it. We love speaking to a human. They used the word human so many times. The customers valued that. And in our third area that we covered off as well was actually staff satisfaction. So staff are really important to us at John Lewis, and they loved it. They loved, they went from being in store to online sales staff, and they loved learning new skills, feeling constantly busy. Obviously, flexibility was an amazing thing. Rather than having to go into a store where you have fixed hours, we were able to be really flexible, allowing our staff to work from home. So there's benefits in that in terms of like retaining talent. So even though we've got some of these key leading metrics up here, actually what this did for our business was really phenomenal on a whole host of metrics.
Yeah, really interesting, because for us in a technology world, this would be considered a reasonably straightforward use case, especially within the world of CX. But when you look at some of these results, and you see other organizations out there that aren't yet doing this, there's a massive scope for improvement and opportunity.
Yeah, and it's so simple. And I think what everyone's going to wonder is essentially we put in cost to the business, because by having humans on this channel, obviously you would if you're doing technology, but humans are costly. Let's face reality. By adding in that cost, because of how much we were able to turn the dial on these metrics, we managed to turn a profit on this initiative within year 1. So we were able to prove that we could make incremental net operating profit. And I think as an underlying thing, that is, fantastic to be able to achieve in year 1 of any new proposition.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, especially if you fast forward to now, in the current climate, there's a lot of generative AI projects out there, but people are struggling to get profitability and value. So I think that's a really interesting point that you've made. Okay, so we've talked about crawl, we've talked about the key characteristics, and Jesse has given us the use case from John Lewis. So I want to talk a little bit now about the key characteristics of walk. So, these are use cases where organizations leverage a little bit more customer data, and are able to do a little bit more personalization. It's not just about reacting to customers on the website. For example, if a customer clicks a chat widget and they want to chat, that's the customer initiating that conversation. But what we're seeing out there in this stage is proactive chat, for example, or outbound messages that are sent to social messaging channels. So, for example, if I have been on a website before, perhaps that website knows who I am, has information about me, and the next time I engage either on the website or a social messaging channel, the company may reach out to me to try to help. So maybe I'm interested in a particular product, and they will lend a hand to try to help me through that buying cycle. So there's a lot more personalization involved. What we're also seeing is self-service and automation. So Jesse mentioned earlier on about um, basic capability within the John Lewis use case, where it was doing a little bit of segmentation or qualification on the customer, and getting them to the right human agent. Um, in the walk phase, typically you will find self-serve options. So if it's a financial services chatbot, you can check your account balance. You could potentially transfer money, um, and basically perform common inquiries that are good candidates for self-service. What they will also have is the ability to escalate to an agent. So it's not just about self-serving and kind of locking customers into this chatbot. It's also about getting them off to a human agent if they need help. So there's many pros and cons of this chatbot use case. For example, it can run 24/7. Whereas humans may have certain operating hours that they have to work within. So you can access company services and products 24/7. You can leverage data to personalize that customer experience. You can then create a much more consistent customer experience, versus potentially human agents. And again, it depends on the use case. It depends on what you're selling. It's also much more scalable than humans. So we can fire as many interactions as we want at these chatbots, but obviously there is a limitation on the number of humans within each company. Um, on the downside, I would say, particularly when you're talking about proactive engagement on the web, for example, I think there is a danger of being intrusive if done incorrectly. So sometimes, you go on the website, pops up with an annoying message, and it's completely there's no context whatsoever. So companies need to be careful that they actually don't do themselves more harm than good for these particular use cases. So, Jesse, is there anything you want to add just on the walk phase, before I show a video of what a customer experience may look like for a customer going through that buying cycle?
Yeah, I think for me, walk is really where intelligence starts to play a part within this. So, and that's a key distinction between crawl and walk. So crawl is like in the example of John Lewis that I shared, we didn't have any intelligence of you as the customer, Rodney. What do we know anything about you? Why are we targeting you in this way? It was all it was customer led. They came to us, but really within walk, we're starting to fit with the intelligence on multiple areas is starting to play through. And I think an important thing is, and I'll probably remind us again in the run phase, is it's not one or the other. And like you've alluded to here, this will still be handing off to an agent. It depends on your use cases you're going for, because you can imagine in a company like John Lewis, where it's a department store and you've got a huge assortment. Actually, maybe for some of the assortment, you'd always need to speak to a live agent. Maybe for some generative AI would be perfect, and we'll come on to that for a bit. And maybe another use case is self-serve, and this walk phase we're starting to talk about in terms of its chatbot capabilities is where it needs to be. So I guess as we go through this, we kind of want everyone to think that it's not, it's never one size fits all. You don't have to pigeon yourself into one and just try and be one. Actually, you can, using multiple parts of crawl, walk, or run in one could be ideal depending on your business.
And I think it's also worth mentioning as well, when you go from left to right across that maturity model from crawl, walk, run, typically we would see better results, at scale as you go across that maturity model. The other thing though is that, it becomes more sophisticated, which usually means more effort and more cost. But the actual ROI should increase because you're bringing more benefit. So, I guess it's not just about, my point is, it's not just about the characteristics and how, easy or hard it is. It's also about increasing ROI, but also having a cost and an effort there. And we'll talk about some of the challenges later on. Jesse, I'm keen to hear from you on that topic.
Yeah, and just to sneak one in there as well, because I think linked to that, because it's very important, is risk. Because with that more cost, more effort, your risk also increases. Particularly, and I think this is where it's very important, like you said, to start. If you start from the beginning with the walk, you mitigate that risk because you have a greater level of understanding. If you go straight in for the big bang, as everyone's probably thinking, like Gen AI selling, you could spend an awful lot of money, time, and effort, and it might not pull off. I think going through this journey helps you mitigate that risk quite significantly.
Yeah, and I think there's different kinds of risks. There's risk to the brand, but there's also risk on a personal level as well. If you're sponsoring this project and you want to show value and results, as you say, Jesse, usually it's much better to start small and iterate and to incrementally show value. Okay. So I'm going to show a video. I think it's 3.5 minutes long, but it gives an entire customer experience across that buying cycle. It's using automation. It's escalating out to a live agent whenever a customer needs help. But I think it's a great example of maybe a more advanced walk use case.
This is Sophia. She's on a quest to buy a gaming laptop for her son Alex, who is 18 in a couple of weeks, but isn't quite sure where to start. Taking advice from her friend John, she's about to dive into the world of online research. Sophia, curious and eager, begins her online search during her lunch break the next day. She hops onto Google to get an initial sense of laptops and prices. The rest of the week, see Sophia in detective mode, observing Alex, trying to understand the intricacies of gaming specs. After learning more from Alex, Sophia revisits a website she was on yesterday. The Syndeo retail assistant appears, offering help with gaming laptops. Utilizing advanced generative AI, context, and guardrails, the assistant steps in, gathering Sophia's needs and context. It helps guide Sophia on other factors to consider when choosing a gaming laptop. Notice how the assistant handles the conversation when Sophia doesn't answer the budget question on the first attempt. It smoothly rephrases and asks her again. Once it captures Sophia's needs, the assistant scans the product catalog, recommending options. Sophia can either add the laptop to her cart or dive into reviews. Sophia opts to view the reviews and sees a concise summary of over 100 reviews in just one paragraph. This boosts her confidence and reinforces her decision to buy. Sophia makes her choice, and the retail assistant refreshes the cart. But it doesn't stop there. Recognizing Sophia has budget to spare, it suggests complementary products for her laptop, ensuring she remains within her budget. Sophia zeroes in on a mouse, weighing up the 3 suggested choices. She picks the Acer, and her cart gets an update. Confident in her choices, Sophia moves to check out, but stalls for a few minutes, uncertain about the delivery fees. Quick to pick up on Sophia's pause, the Syndeo retail assistant intervenes, addressing her worries. It deftly steers her back to finalizing the purchase, avoiding a potential cart abandonment. After finalizing her order, Sophia is presented with the confirmation. Collaborating seamlessly with the website, the Syndeo retail assistant thanks Sophia and suggests sending the order details to her WhatsApp. This opens the door for streamlined support, crafting a smoother and more efficient experience. Regrettably, when Sophia's laptop arrives 5 days later, it's missing the charger. Luckily, since Sophia opted for the WhatsApp service during her purchase, she swiftly reconnects with the company to address the oversight. The retail assistant promptly elevates the issue to a desktop agent who, by analyzing the on-screen sentiment, discerns Sophia's displeasure. Aiming to transition her sentiment to a positive green, he offers Sophia a complimentary next-day delivery for the missing charger and gives her a $50 GameStop voucher. Sophia's sentiment promptly shifts to a satisfied green. After a small hiccup with the charger 3 days previous, joy is restored and Alex is thrilled with his new laptop. A week later, Sophia is pleasantly surprised. The company, showing genuine interest, seeks feedback and asks for permission to share it on the company's social page and third-party review sites. Come mid-November, and just in time for Cyber Monday, Sophia has the perfect Christmas gift idea, all thanks to a thoughtful message from the tech shop. Syndeo, conversational AI for the customer journey. More leads, higher conversions, better service.
Okay, so I mean, I would actually, I don't know, I'd be keen to get your thoughts, Jesse, but I would say that chatbot and that use case is quite a feature-rich example of a walk use case. I mean, in reality, there's maybe one or two features in there that we would consider to be run, but like we said earlier on, there's a bit of overlap between the phases. But I mean, if you look at the capabilities within that use case, there's proactive chat, there's personalization and intelligence. There is automation, there's escalation to agents, and we're also using multiple channels to really create a seamless customer experience, and to meet the outcomes of the customer, but also meet the outcomes of the business, which is important. It's about finding that middle ground, and that particular use case is really based around these three business outcomes. It's about generating more leads. It's about higher conversions. It's about better service.
I think it's fair to say it's a very fast walk. It's a great. It's like when you see them at like the marathon and they're like they're not running, but they're going very fast walking. That's an example. But I say that just not to scare anybody off, because I don't think that's not like your entry level into walk at all. I think it's a great case study because what it does is demonstrate so many different parts of what that walk looks like, and it's definitely something to aim for within walk. But I think it's a fantastic example because it just shows you all those different touch points that there could be. And that's that. And I think that's the distinction between crawl and walk, right? Because in John Lewis, it was very much about a customer comes in, got a question about product, sell that product, and you can see immediately with that case study just how much more there is to it. I think it's a great example of all the different parts of walk. But what I'd say to them is don't get scared off by that. It's a fantastic example. It's a journey.
Yeah, you're right. I think within, if you start off on a crawl, and then you go into walk, there's multiple steps within these phases as well. And that's where the likes of Jesse can really bring his insights. It's understanding what those steps are and how to guide through those. So I think the question viewers might be asking, Jesse, is okay, well, if walk, what is run? So
it's impressive enough, wasn't it? That's how can we possibly top that?
Yeah, but as you mentioned earlier, run is the North Star. It's really going even beyond what we showed for walk, and it's doing things that are a little bit more complicated to do, a little bit more sophisticated. For example, using more generative AI to drive unstructured conversation, but with guardrails. It's about using much deeper integration to the website, and we don't really have a full example here of our run, but we're going to talk about some features that we believe would be in this kind of next generation use case.
And I think it's fair to say that we don't have an example because it doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist yet, I should correct myself, because that's exactly why it is a North Star. This is partly, what we're talking about, this end state of run is partly kind of theoretical to an extent, because it's kind of like we can see it's coming if all these perfect parts come together and are done in their amazing space, which we'll run through now. But yeah, there's definitely, and I know, Rodney, you and your team are working on stuff that is definitely classed within run.
Yeah, and we're going to give you a bit of a sneak preview of some of these features. But if you think about crawl being the sort of live chat interaction, and then walk as the chatbot, I consider run as almost like a personal VIP concierge. So it's a much deeper level of personalization. It's a much deeper integration with how you interact on the web. So typically today you will have a chatbot that sits on a website, but they're completely disconnected. So it's about having this. I think you mentioned it a few days back, Jesse, about this symbiotic conversation, this very closely linked, integrated conversation where you kind of don't have a beginning or an end. So I think that's our vision, and we're going to talk about some of the characteristics of that now.
I thought of a good example for symbiotic, because I think that's where we're going to it. It's quite theoretical in a sense of, and I put that in the realm of like proactive, reactive, symbiotic. And I think what we're trying to get across by that is almost like this deep state of conversation between the consumer and the business. And I think a really great example for this is actually what we as humans have in our personal lives, and actually breaking down these boundaries of, for example, I will have conversations with some of my family members or friends that are across multiple channels, that are in person in different facets, and compare that to like a store or something maybe. But that conversation never really starts and never really ends. It's that deep kind of relationship, but that conversation is kind of ongoing. And I guess that's what we're trying to get across with that is how do we really take this to the next level? And I think that's what we see, at the very far end of North is this concept of symbiotic conversations.
Yeah. I mean, if you take an example today, typically what happens is if a customer is interested in a product, they go through this buying cycle. So they're made aware of a product. They then go consider that product, they research it, they evaluate the different options, they then make a decision. And if they're comfortable, they make that decision, they make that purchase. Those first phases are critical for organizations to get right, because even marginal gains within those first phases really increases revenue, it improves experience, and so on. But it's not just about the purchase, about what happens after the purchase. So if I go and order a laptop off Amazon or something, and the laptop doesn't work after a week, what do I do? Who do I contact? That's really, really important as a consumer. So it's about supporting the customer. And if companies do a good job in those first 5 phases, then the reality is that people will advocate the brand. They will talk to their friends. It's happened to me a few times. I flew Emirates Airlines when I was out working in Dubai, and I was put on a waiting list for an upgrade. But when I rang into Emirates Airlines, and this wasn't recently, this was maybe 7 years ago. when I rang into their customer service, it knew who I was and it gave me an immediate update. Hi Rodney, just to let you know, you're third in queue for an upgrade, and that was the reason I was calling in. So I didn't need to speak to anybody. I got the message. They knew what I was potentially ringing them about, and I remember telling people, because that was one of the first few times that I had experienced personalization. Um, and intelligence. And I remember telling loads of people about that example when I presented. I told my friends, and I still talk about it because the reality is that there's still not enough of that out there. 7 years on, and there's a lot of talk about generative AI and so on, but I still genuinely believe that intelligence and personalization at the start of an interaction, for example, is much more powerful than that what we can do today. Certainly today with generative AI. I'm not saying we can't do more powerful things with generative AI. We absolutely can, but that was just an example of a really surprising and delightful customer experience, and an example of how I then shared that with my friends. But I think the point here about AI concierge is it's not just about a single interaction. It's not just about a single cycle across those 6 phases. It's about multiple cycles. So if I buy a laptop today, and you've seen it in the retail assistant clip earlier, a few months later, uh, Sophia got a WhatsApp message to say there was an offer on gaming chairs because she had bought a gaming laptop 3 months previous. So it's about connecting the dots, about creating many of these cycles so that you get your customers coming back time after time. And I think that relationship, it becomes a relationship then, as opposed to an interaction or even a single buying journey.
I think it's a really important point. And I love the Emirates example. I think we all have those in our lives, about those moments with brands that we've interacted with, which are almost like the best ad spend, best ad return that brand could have ever have had, and it's completely immeasurable, right?
Yeah.
But what you know in your hearts of heart is that by doing that, whoever was responsible for that in their product area or their business, they knew that they might not be able to measure some of those impacts, but the value they knew would go on for like years, and it is well beyond what could be documented. And I think it's just about doing the right thing as a brand. You know ultimately what's going to be the right thing, and doing that right thing for your consumers will pay dividends. I think we all have those use cases. You could probably say to anyone on this webinar, what's that one thing, that one moment of kindness or intelligence that brand done, and just like imagine. And how many times have you probably told it to Rodney? You've told this to, I don't know how many people are going to go to the webinar. Hopefully, quite a lot. But you've just sold Emirates even more to Emirates after that. So I guess what we're saying is the value of some of this stuff goes way beyond some of the things that are measurable. So really aim high with it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so one of the things that we talked about earlier was the deeper integration with a website. So I'm going to give you an example of something that we're working on here at Syndeo on kind of bridging that gap between a chatbot or an AI assistant and the actual website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a video, but I'm going to pause it and I'm going to talk through it. So just bear with me. Okay, so this is an example website. The person has arrived on the website. They've received this little pop-up that says, "Hi, I'm Grace, your virtual AI concierge. Can I help?" John, the customer, clicks on it. And he says, "Yes, I'm looking to buy a computer." And the assistant responds to say, "Sure. Can I show you on the site?" So basically what's happened here is that the AI assistant wants to use the screen state on the laptop, the much bigger screen state. So rather than try and sell something within the chatbot channel or the chatbot widget, they're using the actual website. So the chatbot here is actually driving and engaging and interacting with the website to assist the customer. So you'll see here that what has happened is that the website has been updated to go to computer screen, and it shows the computers because that is what the customers asked for. So the customer then says, "Do you have any gaming computers?" And what happens now is quite interesting. So this is where we start to bridge the gap between conversation and search on a website. So you'll see here that at the top of the website, gaming laptops has actually been automatically entered into the search box, and that has been initiated. The customer hasn't done that. That has been initiated by the AI assistant here. And what happens now is it shows the gaming laptops. The next question that the customer asks is, which one has the most RAM and which one would you recommend? So, if you walk into a shop, a physical store, sometimes you'll go up to the shop assistant and say, "Can you help me with this? I'm looking for size 32 jeans or whatever, and what's the difference between these ones and those ones?" So the shop assistant is helping, and this is what the AI assistant is doing here. So not only does it show the gaming laptops, but it's actually highlighted the gaming laptop with the most RAM, and also the laptop that it recommends for this particular customer. So you can see that it's interacting with and in sync with the website to create a much better and informed shopping experience. So what happens now is quite interesting. So up until this point, the AI assistant has been driving the website and informing the website, but the customer goes off track. They don't click on the laptop that was recommended. They're going to click on this laptop here, and that laptop has got less RAM. So what the AI assistant says is, that's a great laptop, but it doesn't have as much RAM, and the user reviews are 4.5 instead of 4.8. So the previous laptop was, I think, 4.8. So the chatbot is kind of working side by side here, going, yes, you've clicked another laptop, but just so you're aware, so it's making it's helping to educate the customer and making sure that they're fully informed before making a decision. Now, in this example, the customer just decides to continue because it's about budget for them. It's a cheaper laptop, and they're obviously happy enough with the RAM, so they go ahead and buy it. And as you can see here, they check to see if it's in stock at a local branch, and the AI assistant asks if they would like to reserve one. They say yes, and they leave their details. So really, this is an example of a much deeper integration to the website. It's not easy to do, but it creates a much better experience, and we would consider that. I mean, Jesse, I'd be keen to hear your thoughts, but I have not seen too many of those examples out there yet.
No, definitely not. And I think that's the beginning of Symbiotic, that kind of deeper level of relationship that then exists between the conversation, but also the wider estate of your business. Such as in this case, the website itself, and how those two work together. It's not just like one controlling the other, or it's like that deeper level, which you can obviously see through that great example.
Yeah, and I think that's the web. So you've got a screen estate to work with there, but what happens when you go to mobile? And this is a big challenge for organizations today. Is do you offer chat, or does it impact or take away from the ability to sell? And what we're looking at here at Syndeo is really reconfiguring the user experience and the interface to try to accommodate both. So much like the concept of the deeper integration with the website and the AI system driving the website and vice versa, we're bringing that to mobile. And we're currently experimenting with some customers on how best to deal with that chat interface. In this example, you can see, we only show the most recent message. We're also looking at other ideas as well. But you'll also see on the right hand side that we've got this little arrow that points to the bed that the AI assistant is recommending. So it's about bringing that deeper integration to not only the website but also the mobile device, and being smart with the screen estate. Okay, we're nearly at the end. So Jesse, we're going to talk about some of the common barriers to change. I see it every day when I talk to organizations going through digital transformations. Even simple, small projects that we would consider to be small are very large within some of these organizations in terms of perception. So talk to us a little bit about some of the barriers that you've faced, within John Lewis and within other organizations that you've worked for, and how you've overcome them.
Yeah, and I think the three that are on the screen are really great ways to sum them up in this kind of triangle of technical, cultural, and operational. My experience is always that the technical is actually the easiest to overcome. And that's partly because, generally, if you've got a problem and you're looking for a solution that's based on technology, there's a whole host of fantastic vendors out there. And they've been there, they've done that before, and they've got a great product. And actually, just because it's a great product and a great technology fit for your business doesn't mean it's going to work. The two below are probably just as important and should be given just as much emphasis as the technology side. So cultural, operational. For example, within John Lewis, how do we change the mindset of adding in humans, so cost, into this operation for live chat for selling? Because customer service, when you're stripping down costs, you reduce the contact, you try and speak as little as possible, most efficient conversations. When we started this new operation, how do we change the culture around this from being cost cutting, reducing, to actually we want more conversations, we want longer conversations, we don't want anyone to feel rushed. So, it's a big cultural and operational change in both those. And we were doing this, John Lewis is 160 years old now, I think. So, it's a big challenge to make these changes. So I think whenever you're going into this, don't just focus on the technology, because that's not enough to succeed. It's the other two that you need to pay just as much important attention to.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing from an industry point of view is there's lots of organizations now realizing that if they don't do anything, if they stand still, they're going to die, from a brand perspective. So, when it comes to digital transformation, especially, there's things you can do out there. Yes, there will be challenges and barriers, but if John Lewis can do it, anybody can do it, So yeah, for sure. Okay. With that in mind, Jesse, what are we advising our viewers in terms of getting started?
Yeah, so first of all, use our maturity model. And I'm sure if you haven't got a photo of it by now, it'll be on, I'm sure we were putting it on Cindio's website. We'll put it on the chit chat. We'll make sure it's super clear. For however you see this on LinkedIn, whatever, you can access this model. It's completely open to you. And just assess yourself. Start to think of where you currently are within there. What could work for your business? What are the opportunities? Is there problems? Really get deep into your customers. That should always be your beginning point. So understanding your current customer problems and what you need to solve for them. And then the great thing about this space is there's a heck of a lot of experts. So partner with them. And by that, we usually mean the technology companies. So, at the end of the day, platforms are providing this technology. And what you really want to do is collaborate with them because of the experience they have in this space. Because they're not just providing you the technology, they can provide you that experience and their skills, have done it with smaller companies and yours, larger companies. they would have had experiences of failing in this space, so you don't have to, and also of course their successes. So you really want to make sure you're collaborative with what we like to refer to as a partner, not a supplier in this space. You can actually get as much value out of that rather than just the technology. And then the third is take action and start small. I think, like you saw, it's called crawl for a reason, because anybody can do it. You can just get going, literally. If you're a company, maybe a small company, you could just put like a WhatsApp number on your website or a live chat. It can take a couple of days if it's going through to a human. Just begin, because until you do it, you won't understand what the opportunities are and what they aren't. And just by doing it, you understand so much more about your customers and about this space. Like, genuinely, in terms of this, when we did this to John Lewis, the assumptions we had just completely changed our hypotheses, what we thought we knew. Like, one of my important learns was, like, honestly, some of the questions coming through that our customers would ask were out of this world. I had no idea what half the questions actually meant. And I was amazed, but it just showed how amazing our staff were that they could answer all of them, because they were so specific. They used so much technical language and references to these products, and after, all this detail. And we never knew that was a problem at John Lewis. But just by doing this very small, easy step, we learned so much about our customers in this space. So, just start. Don't think about the run too much yet. Don't think about all the advanced technology. Just get going, and you'll learn so much, and that will inform what your next step should be.
Brilliant. Okay, with that in mind, we talked about partnering with companies, and happy to announce that we're offering a complimentary 2-hour assessment meeting around conversational commerce. So if you're interested in partnering with ourselves, then we would be more than happy to spend a couple of hours with you to assess your current needs, what your situation is at the minute, where you are in that maturity model, and what you need to do to move forward. And we'll also look at, helping to build a vision, or at least discussing what a vision would look like. And we may even leave you with a little prototype to showcase internally. So if you would like to make use of that, then please point your camera at this QR code, or contact us at info@syndeo.cx, or visit our website. We are at the end, Jesse. So I would very much like to thank you, Jesse, for joining this webinar. Some of your insights are fascinating. Certainly, I actually met Jesse at the Chatbot Summit last year in Edinburgh, and we had some interesting conversations then and since then. So thanks again, Jesse, for joining the webinar and for providing some really good, valuable insights to our audience.
It's been a pleasure, Rodney. I've had great fun working on the maturity model with you guys, and yeah, I've loved the webinar. Thank you very much for having me along.
Great. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Take care all. Goodbye.